All right, we're going to get back to the Ryan Lochte situation now. I want to really break down some of the legal things. We're talking about it just kind of on the surface, but we have a legal expert with us, Craig Ashton from the law offices of Ashton and Price. Thank you for spending some time with us, Craig. I know you've been delving into this topic quite a bit. A lot of people asking you, hey, what the heck could happen to our American swimmers? Are they in big legal trouble here? How are you, Craig?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I just actually watched the press conference with the head of Central Police of Rio and then the head of Tourism Police in Rio de Janeiro. And it's pretty interesting that all four of the swimmers, James Fegan, Jack Conger, Gunnar Benson, and Ryan Lochte, could be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. Now, Ryan Lochte's back in the U.S., of course, but for the other three, their passports are pulled. They're going to have to stay in Brazil for a while. And, that's not going to be a fun experience for them.
Well, I mean, usually Brazil, my parents had the good sense to take me there when I was 14, so it has a pretty good vibe even when you're 14, but not under these circumstances. So here's what's going on. Basically, as you know, Ryan Lochte went on and talked to Matt Lauer to say that he was basically held up at gunpoint by somebody impersonating a police officer in Rio.
Right, which is a lawyer, you would say never speak to the media, right? That'd be the first thing if you're actually in consultation with somebody, right, Craig?
Yes, I mean, he goes on and gives this story broadly covered, which, if you travel a bit, I mean, to Rio de Janeiro, this is super important because this is millions of dollars are on the line, and you have a very famous person. He's the second most decorated swimmer in U.S. history, I believe, saying that he was basically pulled out of a taxi cab and then at gunpoint robbed. Then the interesting thing was there's a video of him going back to the Olympic Village. He's got his wristwatch on. He's got his iPhone still. He's kind of playing around, which isn't the type of demeanor that you would usually associate with being robbed a few hours before. And so a judge in Rio took a look at the videos. The police chief of Rio said he looked at the video from the gas station where apparently they went, looked at the video from the athletes' village, and then contacted witnesses, and that he just gave a press conference, said that he concluded that there was no robbery, and that the swimmers were not victims of police impersonation robbery, and that they vandalized a bathroom. They don't know exactly who did it, and they paid $51, $20 in U.S. dollars, and 100 reals, which is the Brazilian currency, for a total of $51 to pay for the vandalism. And now they're looking at them for false communications of a crime. And what was really interesting is Jeff Ostro is the attorney for Ryan Lochte, and instead of owning this, he goes on the media and says that basically Brazil has had a real problem with the Olympic Games. They can't keep Zika virus under control. There's lots of pollution, and ultimately they're trying to blame this on Ryan Lochte because they don't have their own house in order. Well, guess what? And then all of a sudden, Rio goes, you're calling into question our integrity, and then it becomes a chest-thumping match, and I don't think the swimmer's going to win that one.
No, not at all. It sounds like this lawyer for Lochte's consulting with the Donald Trump campaign, right?
One rule is a lawyer, don't make it worse.
No, exactly. Don't double down at the worst moment. Now, let's get into the legal ramifications. Let's just say the story is fabricated. We don't know for sure what happened. They're still investigating everything. But let's say Ryan Lochte made up the story, okay? Now, did he talk to police investigators? Because it's one thing to go on and maybe lie to Matt Lauer. That's not really a legal issue per se, but if it did involve legal authorities there, I mean, that would be a criminal prosecution type case, right?
Well, yeah, the interesting thing is that in Brazil, it's called the false communication of a crime. And once he gave that interview, then all of a sudden the taxi cab driver came forward, and the information that I have is he actually did give a statement, and it basically kind of mirrored what he told Matt Lauer. So if that is the case, then that is a false communication of a crime, which is, according to what I've read, it's either 6 months or it could be up to 3 to 5 years, depending on what crime you're associating that you ultimately are claiming that didn't occur. Then there is a 1961 extradition treaty, which actually was signed by Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Wow.
And then put into effect during LBJ. And the reason I know this, I have a radio show on Thursdays, and we talked about this. I did a bit of research. And so at the end of the day, what happened was that this extradition treaty, perjury, which is pretty much what he did, probably applies. And if there's a penalty of more than a year in the United States and more than a year in Brazil, which makes it basically equivalent of a felony, he could be extradited. And the chip that Brazil has is they've got 3 of the swimmers. And I guarantee you they're going to turn tail and probably not back Ryan Lochte if they're stuck in Brazil. and he's back, wherever he is in the United States.
And it sounds like they're already starting to throw Ryan a little bit under the bus because,
wouldn't you?
Well, all I want to do is get home at this point, Craig. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about.
That's a long way to go.
Yeah, you're not swimming back to the U.S. shores, that's for sure.
So, but the thing that's interesting is that Ryan Lochte, according to the two police chiefs of Rio, was drunk, and ultimately he was the aggressor, and he's the one who kind of started the whole thing, which then calls into questions all of the endorsements he has, because that's going to be a breach of contract from a legal perspective, and the morality clause for Speedo, Mutual of Omaha, Gillette, Gatorade, Procter & Gamble, regardless of what happens now, even if he doesn't get charged, I think he's toast on all of those endorsements, and that he could be USA Swimming could ban him for life.
Wow, that's serious stuff. Now, I'm here with Adrian and with Kenny, two former athletes, of course, and they thought that this could somewhat be a publicity stunt. I don't want to speak for you, Kenny. You can go ahead and speak freely here, too. But, I mean, in your mind, Craig, have you seen anybody who would consider doing this stuff for publicity? We know Ryan Lochte's a publicity hound. We get that. But, I mean, that would be beyond crazy.
I mean, you mentioned Donald Trump. I mean, that's the only equivalent I can see in terms of somebody going this far with something that didn't occur to get publicity. I can't see it. I just think it was probably a night on the town gone wrong. There was a suggestion by the police chief in Rio that some of them have girlfriends and they didn't want them to know exactly what they were up to. And so they came up with this story about being accosted by somebody impersonating a police officer, and then it got out of hand.
Well, Craig, so this is Adrian, and my thing is we've actually heard and heard about some of the other things out there, like who was the first Olympian that got there and was robbed, and there was a couple other people that have had run-ins where they've been assaulted or things have been stolen from them, right?
Yes.
And have they caught those people that have done that, or
not that I've heard? So there's a big investigation because obviously, I mean, Rio wants to create a lasting impression on the world, which is this is a great place to come, Copacabana, look at the beautiful people, friendly environment, and then now it's turned into nobody's paying attention to the Olympics anymore, and they're looking to see whether or not athletes are being accosted on every corner. So I don't think they've come to a conclusion on any of those, but I guarantee you they're going to look at them very closely, and if they can exonerate Rio, they will. One of the interesting things I heard from the police chief was he basically thinks Ryan Lochte and the swimmers must apologize to the city of Rio de Janeiro because their good name has been tainted. And that's one of the things they're probably looking for, and depending on how these swimmers react is going to determine how hard the book is thrown at them from a Brazilian perspective.
Well, I think part of this, too, obviously coming into the Olympics, Rio was so bashed about how they put the Olympics together and all the threats of everything going on. So when Ryan and these guys, if it is fabricated, came up with this story, everybody bought it right away because it fit right into the whole motif of what was going on down there.
Yeah, because there's something called assumption of the risk when you engage in a sporting activity. And one of the things you don't assume is the risk of getting, some sort of virus, or because when they're doing all that rowing on that lagoon that has got human waste in it. I mean, to me, I don't think that's a fair endeavor to place upon these people who've been training for all these years. So I think that's a reality. But these other things, you might be right. I mean, they were taking on that theme and used it to try to get them out of responsibility for some stupid behavior that they did. Now it's really backfiring.
Yeah, they just thought everybody would buy it, and it would just kind of go unnoticed and just not challenged, and it obviously is backfiring on them. Now, Craig, as you look forward, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but obviously you have a lot of great legal expertise. What are the chances you think Ryan Lochte would actually have to go back to Brazil and face anything here?
I think pretty slim, based upon the fact that this is, although an important crime, it's not a super serious crime like murder or rape or something that would be very significant violation of the law. So I think him coming back almost not going to happen unless the Brazilian government basically leverages the other three swimmers. He did it, and we want out, you bring him back. And that would be the only leverage point I could see that would even make that a remote possibility. I think he's staying in the United States.
Craig, this is Kenny Thomas. How you doing?
Yeah.
How does Ryan get to leave and the other swimmers get to stay? How did that happen?
Well, his lawyer was basically 1 for 10 because he's going and inflaming the situation, but I think he probably gave him good advice that says leave the country. And I think he snuck under the radar just before it became problematic to leave. So that's how he did it. He just was an opportunist.
And he just said goodbye to everybody else. I am out of here.
I mean, who wants to hang out with that guy in Rio?
That's a good point. All right, Craig, excellent stuff. Totally appreciate you breaking it down. That was really insightful, and certainly good to hear a legal point of view of what's going on down in Rio.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Having swum Alcatraz more than once, I know what swimming's like, and at the end of the day, these guys aren't the people I'm familiar with.
Well, if you were able to swim from the rock back to the shore, you're a pretty darn good swimmer, Craig.
Yeah, the sharks give me professional courtesy.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I think I love it. I think what we're going to have here, we're going to see a hostage-style apology from several swimmers.
I think you're right.
Yeah, that's probably where this thing is shaking out, and they're all going to come back probably with a slap on the wrist. That would be my guess.
I think you're right. I would agree with you.
All right, great stuff, Craig. Look forward to talking to you again.
All right, thank you very much. Have a great day.
All right, you too. That's Craig Ashton from the law offices of Ashton and Price. We'll take the break. When we come back, Eric's online. We're going to get to you, Eric. We'll take your phone calls, 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. Charles Barkley, and of course, he's always getting into controversy and topics, but he's talking now about Olympic gold versus winning an NBA championship, following up on Carmelo's comments. We'll break that down a little bit, too. Lots to get to today. Full show until 2 o'clock. It's The Lowdown. Scott, Adrian, and Kenny filling in for Damian and Ken right here on Sports 1140 KHTK.